This is the Ready Set Podcast, and here's your host, me, Joe Persinger. Hey, welcome to Ready Set Podcast. What a show do we have for you this week? Coming to you live from Central Florida on all of our podcast platforms, YouTube, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. So New Hampshire Democrats are putting their shekels behind two socialists and a moderate Minnesota prosecutor. Joe Biden is a sinking ship. He makes the Titanic look like it's still floating out there. The XFL, made its debut last weekend. But what's up with those names? Major League Baseball is a turd spiraling down a toilet. Speaking of which, the coronavirus and China are setting the world back, and Bernie is the DNC's worst nightmare. So before we get started here, we are, a week or so out of impeachment, and the Democrats are already looking for a pretext to the next round of investigations. I don't even want to get into that. So I guess I kind of did gloss over the political strip halftime show, but there was a lot of, hoopla and fake outrage going on social media circles about, this halftime show. For instance, the first narrative I think I started seeing on Facebook was that white conservative women from middle America were outraged about, the two Hispanic women in scantily clad clothing on a stage in front of 25, 30 million people. And then they would juxtapose that with, various memes of them putting their daughters or themselves in similar situations minus, the 25 million people. And it just didn't, it's not like I have an abundance of people of that demographic that float around my social circles, but, you can still kind of get a gauge on it. And from what I gathered, most Americans, or the silent majority of most people, this is just something that was garnered up online, like most outrage is. It's just fake. Now, a lot of it, like I was saying, is fake kind, and it's a false narrative. The majority of middle-aged white women are not on Twitter. Do you know who are on Twitter? Not middle-aged white women, but woke young white liberals. Now, in my defense, the Super Bowl is about the football game. It's not about the halftime show. I know some people like to invert that. Usually those are people who aren't really watching the football game. But it's about playing football and, selling beer, chicken wings, more beer, clothes, and whoever, and apparently this year, and votes. Well, not selling votes, buying votes. And again, it's about the football game and not the dancing and the lip syncing that takes place in between the first and the second half. And it was a good show. That was my watch going off. And I liked it. I mean, I actually watched it a second time with my girlfriend, and it had something for everyone. And you could parse that however you would like. But I will say, if you are wondering where the intersection of women's empowerment and objectification is, it's definitely the Super Bowl halftime show. All right, enough talking about it. I dragged this out too long. This is your one-stop shop, current events and politics podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. Are you ready? Set podcast! All right, football is back. And nope, not the NFL. It's the XFL, baby. So we have an 8-team league: Houston, Los Angeles, Tampa, Washington, D.C., Seattle, New York, St. Louis, and Dallas. I checked it out last weekend. I actually need to check if it's playing today. I did not do that. So it's a faster-paced game with a 25-second play clock lasting 3 hours, not 3.5. So they save, 30 minutes by doing so. They want to keep the young kids involved. They could do what NBA did this weekend and just fucking talk about TikTok nonstop and, placate to the Chinese. I digress. The way the teams line up on kickoff is different. I think they line them up about on the 35, 30, something like that, 5 yards apart. Ball gets kicked off, and then they can engage when the person catches the ball. Not a bad idea. You only need 1 foot in for a catch to be a catch, so that's similar to college football rules. The extra point has an option to go for a. You can go for 1 point from like the 2 yard line, 2 points from like the 5 yard line. I think 3 points from the 10 yard line. Don't kill me if I'm wrong, but something like that. So that adds an extra element to the game. So if you think about it, if you're down, you know, 18 points, it's still a 2-score game if you can hit that 3-point conversion. So it's a quality, it's not equality, excuse me, it's quality, ideally football, faster paced emphasis on offense. And the broadcast is really what differs it from the NFL because, like, I guess some people would find this a little gimmicky. I don't because one of the things that always intrigues me about the NFL is how the players and coaches are talking to each other. What do the plays sound like? X right 47 square Y hurdle blah blah blah. I mean, I should have probably wrote one out to make me sound cooler than I really am. But that's kind of what the XFL gives you, that insider look. I mean, they had Pat McAfee interviewing guys on the sidelines right after they're making touchdowns. You can hear the head coach or the play caller talking to the quarterback in real time. It's actually really interesting. It's definitely check it out. But I will tell you, these team names are brutal. Let's go over some, shall we? The Houston Roughnecks. Is that a play on the Oilers? Oh, it is. Well, that's not bad. Okay. So, I mean, if you look at the logo, they actually have some Easter eggs. No, a tip of the cap to the team they're kind of used to. You know what I'm fucking saying. The Roughnecks. It's similar to, the Houston Oilers. But, I would have called them the Derricks or the Oil Rigs. I mean, there's probably a lot of millennial kids named Derek in the Houston area. Anyway. What else we got here? The Los Angeles Wildcats. Possibly named after a similar team from the Los Angeles areas, but this would have been an old NFL. This is actually kind of funny. Way back when, I want to say back in the 20s, maybe the 30s, Los Angeles had an NFL team, but they were based out of Rock Island, Illinois. But I can't really find anything that confirms that that's exactly what the Los Angeles Wildcats XFL team was basing itself off of. But the Wildcats, I mean, what about like the Coyotes or Vegans? Oh, the LA Homeless. That would be perfect. What else we got here from the West? The Seattle Dragons. Yeah, it's not horrible. I like the logo, the colors. The other possible names that were thrown out for this franchise were the Wild, the Fury, the Surge, the Force. I mean, I'd say they definitely made the right choice because those 4 that I just listed sounds like a WNBA failing team or a hockey team that already exists. What else we got here? The Washington, D.C. Defenders. That's just a horrible name. It's boring, and the colors are bland. Going here to a local-ish team on the I-4 corridor, we have the Tampa Bay Vipers. This name sounds like a minor league hockey team out of Michigan. I actually think there was wasn't it like the Detroit Vipers? I used to see that jersey all the time. I think it was an AHL team out of Michigan. I'm almost positive. And I think the Chicago area had the Wolves. So when I see Tampa Bay Vipers, I'm just thinking of a minor league hockey team other than a minor league football franchise. And that's the other thing. We don't even have Vipers here in Florida. I mean, what about the Pythons? The Tampa Bay Dixies? Or even the Pirates? That would have been kind of cool. But I don't live in Tampa Bay, so I don't really give a shit. And when I watched Tampa Bay Vipers, they were fucking bad. So I'm not going for them. I'm not going for any of these teams, really. What else we have here? The New York Guardians. Stupid name. Why don't you just call them the New York Eli Mannings? The Guardians of what? Sharks? I mean, it makes no sense. What else? Sharks, Moneybags, Comrades, bail reform has failed, stop and frisk. All these are better names than the Guardians. Where are we here? So the Dallas Renegades. That's our second to last team here. This is a brutal segment. Again, this has the sound of a minor league hockey team coming out of the AHL. I mean, that's the other thing. Does the XFL really need two teams in Texas, let alone on the same side of the state, separated by what, maybe 4 counties? Which sounds like a lot, but Texas is a big fucking state. What else we got here? One last one to go. The St. Louis Battlehawks. The Battlehawks. That's a pretty badass name. The only reason St. Louis actually got a franchise, and not Chicago, I'm guessing, was because the former Rams practice facility and stadium were available because, Stan Kroenke just ripped him out of St. Louis and moved him to L.A. Rightfully so, St. Louis is an armpit. If you live in St. Louis, I was just kidding. No, I wasn't. You guys voted for Trump, so you're okay in my book. Anyway, the XFL wanted to take advantage of, here actually is perfect transition here. The XFL wanted to take advantage of the ill sentiments towards the NFL because the Cardinals and the Rams both moved out of the city. And, St. Louis fans, they're just desperate to be paid attention to. So it might be working. It looks like the Battlehawks have the highest social media following it has the highest social media following and army of trolls. And we all know why that is. That's because that fan base is basically a mixed bag of Bernie supporters and Trump supporters. So it'll be interesting to watch the league evolve over this 10-game season. I'm curious why some of the bigger cities in the Midwest got ignored. Looking at you, Chicago. So get your shit together, Vince. Bring a second city football team to Chicago and call them the Maroons. I'm kind of pulling for this league. Given the saturated nature of our society of connectivity, I think there's a space for spring football in our society. Okay, well, Rob Manfred is treading water, and it looks like it's about to swallow him whole. Before I really bust into everything here, might be getting ahead of my skis, but this Rob Manfred guy might have to go. He was actually the underboss with Bud Selig during the steroid era, and he botched that. Let's see, this 3-batter rule, I see a lot of pushback on it. I'm not really opposed to it. It picks up the game. If they didn't go to commercials for pitching changes, I probably wouldn't really give a shit either way. But I can't explain to you, especially when you're watching MLB.TV, how infuriating it is to wait 5 minutes for the game to come back, someone to throw at a minimum 1 pitch to maybe 10 pitches, and then for it to go back to that same commercial break, and for this process to repeat depending on the situations in the game. So, in that aspect of it, I'm kind of for it. There's no there's plenty of reasons, strategy, I get that. But, baseball's been around since the Civil War. It can evolve. That's okay. I'm not saying, let's turn the postseason into an 8-game tournament, which we're going to get to in about a second here. Or, a 16-game tournament, 14, oh my God, I can't talk. 14-team to 16-team tournament. That's pretty radical. But, a 3-batter minimum, because you don't, again, as a consumer, I'm not trying to watch commercials 15 out of 20 minutes of gameplay. But you're getting a lot of pushback on the 3-batter rule. But there's other things that's going on. A few years ago, Boston gets busted cheating because Major League Baseball had to implement the replay system. And I read this blog actually that was talking about this. It kind of, the whole point of it was why it led to the Houston cheating scandal, but that's not really where I'm going with this. The point that I'm trying to make here is that Major League Baseball is cheap, and they're kind of showing that. That's the other thing. That's kind of what I was I was down a rabbit hole about Major League Baseball the other day, and what you're kind of seeing, what Manfred is doing between this 3-batter rule, botching the steroids situation. Now you have him basically, again, there's two camps that are for. I really don't. The MLB is for fucking over minor league baseball, which is a whole wonky thing that I don't really think anyone wants me to get into. But there's something going on with that, and he's botching that. And it's what it is you could tell they're just not being honest or forthright with what's going on. Now, let me go back to replay really quickly. What happened with replay is instead of MLB going to all 32 ballparks and saying, let's put in a video booth, blah, blah, blah. This guy can, look at the replay and make the decision, so on and so forth. Instead, they cheap out. And I can't remember exactly how they cheaped out, but if you look at the system they have now, all they do is the umpires just, connect, I think, to New York. Someone looks at it from there. Point is that this replay thing is what opened the door to cheating, because it allowed video monitors to be placed, in video rooms. But then what happened is everyone pushed the line, like the Astros. Well, they want to look at their at-bats in the middle of a game. Well, I'm sure as they were looking at their at-bats in the middle of the game, they started noticing the signs the catcher was putting down. You can kind of see where it evolved from there. Now, the whole minor league thing with Rob Manfred, if you want to look into that, I suggest you just do your research. What the fuck was that guy's name? It was David something. Anyway, it's really dumb. Major League Baseball is just trying to save money by fucking over minor league baseball. We'll just call it that. But the point is this replay thing is what opened the door to cheating. And instead of the commissioner doing something about it, when he had something with an Apple Watch going on with Boston, they kind of just slapped them on the wrist. And that basically probably told Houston, well, we can just keep doing what we're fucking doing then. And now look what's going on. You have a sign stealing scandal. You have a tone-deaf Houston Astros team that doesn't even know how to apologize. And this is a billion-dollar company. It's insane. And what's Rob Manfred doing? He's got his fucking thumb up his asshole while he's kissing babies at the Negro League Museum in Kansas City. What? It's unbelievable. I want to watch baseball this year, but this fucking guy is making it impossible. And then in the midst of all of this, they submit this postseason plan. And we're going to go over this kind of quickly here, hopefully. All right, so Major League Baseball wants to shake up the current playoff format, which is almost 30 years old, and put more emphasis on the regular season. Yeah, a lot of pushback on this one. Overall, it seems to be getting a not so great rating as far as how good of an idea it is. I've actually even read someone say that this is basically Rob Manfred's attempt to be like, look over here, not over there. Nothing to see here, folks. No cheating scandal. Look at this new shiny object called what I think could be the postseason in the next few years. Anyway, let's go over what this is. So the big change will be the top team in each league will receive a first-round bye, pass go, and go directly to the divisional series. I mean, why don't you just turn the league to the NFL, the XFL deuce? They basically stole a replay system from the NFL, which, I mean, they don't own that idea, but like they could have come up with something more MLB-ish that doesn't lead to cheating. All right, so anyway, where was I here? So top team in each league will receive a first-round bye, pass go, and go directly to the divisional series. So after that, the next two division winners and the top winning wildcard team would host a wildcard 3-game series, that's the best of 3, giving them home field advantage throughout the entire series. The bottom 3 wildcard teams would all be on the road. So that's out there. So basically what MLB wants to do, when I was reading, is, so I think, let's say these wild card rounds start on like a Monday. They would, because it's all going to be in one city, no one's traveling, they're just going to knock them out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with the divisional series starting on a Thursday or something like that. I mean, again, this is all, this is like NASA talking about going to Saturn. It's just all a pipe dream at this point. So let's break that down really quick before I go ahead here. If your team wins the division with the best record in either the National League or the American League, you're basically going to be watching the World Series at home. or the World Series, the wild card series at home. I hope you don't win the division and end up, that sucks. Even though that happened last year to the Dodgers. So you win the division with the best record, or you win your division with the best record out of all of them. You don't have to play in the wild card series, which I guess already kind of happens. But this is like a 3-game series, which is the difference. To add another twist, and here's kind of where the emphasis in the regular season comes from, gives you a reason not to bench all your players, so to speak. But we're going to get to that in 1 second. So instead of there being 2 wildcard teams that play in a 1-game playoff system, it's going to be bloated to 6 teams total. So the other 2 division winners and the top wildcard team host the 3 bottom-tiered wildcard teams. So you have your 2 teams who get the bye, go to the divisional series because they have the best record. Then the next 2 division winners will fight out for that 2 and 3 seed, and then the best team. Basically, how it works is you have your 3 division winners, your top 1 getting the bye, your 2 and 3 division winners, and then the next person with the best record after the 2 and 3 division winners will be that 3rd wild card. And then your bottom 3 are the best 3 records after that. And however that plays out, it plays out. So the 2 division winners and the top wild card team would host those 3 bottom wild card teams. So are you still with me? Because I know I was all over the place there. But if you write it all down, I'm sure it makes sense. Or if you listen to someone that's more articulate, but never mind. So here's a twist that I was kind of alluding to earlier. And honestly, this is where it gets very, very gimmicky. The team that has that second best record in its respective league gets to choose its opponent from the bottom-tiered group of wildcard teams. So remember, I was saying the second best division record is going to pick from the bottom 3 tier wildcard teams. The third best division record gets to pick who's left from that pool of players. And then the top wildcard team will play whoever didn't get picked. So you can see what the incentive is there. If you have the best record in your league, you don't even have to play in the wildcard round now. Now you just get to get home and rest and get healthy, and hopefully you're not on a hot streak, because that might fuck you over, as we've seen in other professional leagues. Now, if you're that second team that has the second best divisional record, you get to pick from the 3 bottom. Basically that would be what the 5, 6, and 7 team. I think it's 7 teams or whatever. So on and so forth. So let's, instead of trying to imagine this, let's see how this scenario would play out in, the American League final, in the American League final standings last year. So the Astros had the best record. I wonder why. So they would get the bye week. The Yankees, they had the second best record and would have a choice between the Rays, Indians, and the Red Sox, who had the worst record of who would qualify for those 3 bottom 3 wild card teams. So here's where the intrigue comes into play. Who would the Yankees pick? Would they pick Boston and bring in that rivalry right out of the gate? Where was I here? Or would they choose to just avoid the rivalry altogether? I mean, maybe they want to play the bottom tier team so they can just breeze right through. Maybe you don't. Maybe that's the hot team coming into the playoffs. I mean, there's some intrigue there, but again, it's kind of gimmicky. I mean, if I want to watch crap like this, I'll just watch the college football playoff thing. You know what I'm saying? So there's interest in strategy behind this, and I think that's what Major League Baseball is trying to capitalize. And, like I was saying, like the NCAA does with its selection show, that's what Major League Baseball would also do when teams are picking who their opponents would play in the playoffs on live TV. So after, what did I say, the Yankees pick, then it would be Minnesota's turn. And whoever they didn't pick, that's who the Oakland A's would have had to play. So again, it's very different. You have a lot of traditionalists out there, but here's where I'm at with it. I do like how this format does put more emphasis on the regular season and rewards, the top team in each league with a bye week. Think last year's Dodgers team. They coasted to the playoffs with the best record, eliminated in the first round. And the same with the 2008 Cubs. I think they had their division wrapped up going into September, and then ironically were beat by the Dodgers and a Manny Ramirez steroid-induced grand slam. So even winning your division has a benefit now, like if they were to use this system, not now. Teams coasting through the season will no longer have a reason to do so if you want that coveted number one spot. The new wild card system, it seems gimmicky, but the more I look at it, I'm just indifferent. You know what I mean? The system now is fine. This system that's basically the new shiny object, so people stop thinking about cheating in baseball. You know, it could work, but again, it's a very, very dramatic turn. The schoolyard vibe of teams picking their opponents, it's just gimmicky. You know, and I can't say that enough. But here's the upside. Under the current format, 2 wild card teams face off in a 1-game series. Okay? Again, I've seen the Cubs benefit from that. I've seen them not benefit from that. You know, if you're there, and the other side of it too is not even from a fan standpoint. Well, I guess this would be from a fan standpoint, but if you're a fan, the current system, you don't benefit from it, and if you're an owner, you especially don't benefit from it. Case in point. Let's say you're an owner of a GM of one of these wild card teams that are vying for that 1-game coveted spot. Are you going to make those roster moves that can be costly? You know, think renting a player and then losing him in free agency and then giving up your farm system so you can have a guy for maybe 3 months and then not make it into the playoffs? Or worse, get into the playoffs and be out in 9 innings in a 1-game playoff? I mean, there's a lot of risk management involved in that. And in this current system, it's just easier to play it safe and be the selling team at the trade deadline, or just work with what you got and not be aggressive. But in this new system, with more spots available, that risk is easily mitigated. So if you think about it, if, you know, right now, let's say we're in the midst of a season and we got 30 days to go, it's the 1st of July. If there's, I wish I probably should have had some standings here in front of me so I could articulate this a little bit better. But basically, all I'm trying to say is that with more teams, with more spots available in the playoffs, more teams in June and July are going to still feel like they're in it. And the byproduct of that is there's going to be more buyers at the trade deadline. And another byproduct of that is if your team sucks that year, there's going to be more competition for your guys, giving you a better haul in the farm system, if you will, making your team able to get better faster. And more importantly, the regular season will have more of an emphasis on it. Think about it. If your team's a cellar-dwelling team going into fucking May, you're not watching June, July, August, September. I mean, if you're a bottom, I can't even talk. A bottom dweller. Sorry if I blew your ears out there. I blew mine out a little bit. But if you're not watching baseball. It's a grind. But think football. Yeah, football. Think hockey, basketball. A lot of teams are still in it up to the point of, you know, the end of the regular season. So baseball, it's regular season. I mean, even look at the other side of the coin. If your team's dominating, like some of the teams I just talked about earlier, I mean, you can watch, but you're not really watching because there's no emphasis. You're just waiting for the postseason to fucking start. And of course, if you're a player and you've never sniffed the postseason before, this will probably get your vote if one ever goes to the MLB PA. But we'll see. I'd probably, focus on getting all these cheaters out of your sport, Mr. Manfred. Personally, I'd like to see this commish fired. He's making Gary Bettman, the NHL commish, looking like he knows what he's doing. And maybe he does a little bit, but Rob Manfred's a fucking idiot, and he needs to go. So speaking of cheating in the Major League Baseball, am I supposed to really believe that these bulky monsters at a $20 per month gym are not on steroids? I mean, who goes to like a Planet Fitness that is a power lifter or something that's equivalent. And I'm not talking about those, buck 50 otters like myself that fall in that category. Actually, I'm 160 pounds. Unless you see some twink that clearly has 20 pounds of muscle on his frame that doesn't pass the eye test. Sometimes it's not natural, even if it is. Perception is the reality. And I sometimes see these gorilla looking fucks at the gym. The person in me wants to believe that these people have worked hard, put the time and effort into their work and dedication at the gym. But then I remember, I'm in the bowels of a central Florida city that has more Section 8 applications than it does citizens. Schools are overcrowded. I'm talking, the county I'm in built a brand new high school and they still have overcrowding issues. I don't know why I'm on this tangent right now. So not all of these steroid freaks are that, but if you're putting all that time and effort and looking like a gorilla monster fuck, but you're using Planet Fitness to work out at, excuse me, but I'm calling bullshit on you steroid freak. It's like a minimum wage employee showing up to their minimum wage job in a Ferrari. Clearly, you're doing something that isn't on the up and up. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but the coronavirus has affected more than 15,000 people and has almost killed 1,300, and I think those numbers have gone up since I wrote that down. This is originated from the Wuhan province in China. The Communist Party of China has also fired that regional and local communist leader. I think they actually fired another one from another province right next to that one as well. For all you lefties out there that think communism and socialism is the wave of the future, have you been paying attention? Government officials are going door to door and quarantining anyone who shows any symptoms of the virus. And they don't have a choice in the matter. I mean, think about that happening here. I mean, people go door to door. I think someone from the Elizabeth Warren campaign knocked on our door this morning, and I was annoyed. Imagine if there was a government, and they're telling me I have to leave my house. I mean, there's a reason why China doesn't have a Second Amendment. Anyway, and here's more to the point. One news outlet reported a woman failed to say that she had traveled to the Wuhan province, which is ground zero for this coronavirus. So she lied to the government. That's not a good decision. Mostly because she knows if she told them she was in Wuhan, they would have quarantined her. So then someone in her building contracted the disease, which they think happened due to the plumbing and all the units with the number 7 being connected. So the government decided to quarantine the whole building. If not, anyone with the person living in the unit 7, because they think, so kind of what's going on there is they don't really know how this thing is being passed around. Is it through the air? Is it through contact? They don't know. And this lady lied. People ended up being infected by this virus in her building, so they just quarantine everyone. It's classic communism. I mean, that happens here, but in a different sense. Let's say, we'll use Wall Street as an example. The SEC exists because many people abused the stock market 150 years ago or something. There are plenty of stories out there, and each abuse led to a form of regulation. And it's kind of what's going on in China, except it's a little bit more personal, where you have people lying to the government, and then a whole building's getting quarantined. So China reminds me of Democrats, but on a much larger scale. They want all the responsibility of being a global leader, but they can't even take care of their own party and citizens domestically, or run an election in Iowa. Democrats botched the Iowa caucus. The Chinese Communist Party allows a global outbreak of influenza and death. Yeah, go ahead and vote for Bernie. We'll see what happens. All right, so the New Hampshire primary was this week. If a white liberal younger voting bloc could have their way, we'd be saluting Comrade Bernie and his cabinet, which will have AOC as a Commerce Secretary. Oh, what's that? Why can't she be vice president? Because she's 29, you fuck. You have to be 35 to be vice president. Can you imagine her being one heartbeat away from the fucking presidency? Here's one that's even scarier. This came out today, that Michael Bloomberg is considering Hillary Clinton as his running mate, as his vice president. Well, I got news for you, Mike. If you get elected, I would not only sign your will, I would probably expect to be dead or Jeffrey Epstein. Because they're magically going to find Bloomberg hanging in the Lincoln bedroom closet if he becomes elected and she's his vice president. Where was I? Back to the New Hampshire primary here. So Bernie Sanders walks away with 25.73 of the vote, which came out to 76,324, which netted him 9 delegates. Buttigieg got 72,457 votes. That's about 24%. He got 9 delegates. And Klobuchar, which kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't even expect her to come in third ahead of Warren, no less, because Warren is a senator from the state right next to New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So you'd expect her to at least have that third spot. But Klobuchar had 58,796 votes, 19.82% of the vote, 6 delegates. Warren 9.23, and Sleepy Joe came in with 8.4. So there's a lot to unpack with this primary. Let's start at the bottom. Neighboring Senator Liz Warren only gets 9% of the vote. She's DOA. Not to mention, like a true Democrat, a woman said, hey, I have $6 in my bank account. I'm going to give you 3 of it. And like a Democrat, she took the $3. I'm shaking my head right now. Sleepy Joe limps into 5th place again. And the most electable politician, we're told, ends up being a gaff-ridden dead man walking into Las Vegas and South Carolina. And like I said, coming out of nowhere is a moderate out of Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar. Can she go the distance? Does she have the grassroots? I've looked into and seen, a lot of her campaign infrastructure seems to be based around Iowa and New Hampshire. Right after her win in New Hampshire, she was in New York begging for money. I believe she got some and sent some of her staff out to Las Vegas. And there's, so that South Carolina is going to be how she does in the Las Vegas caucus, and South Carolina is going to kind of set up where we go into, I believe, Super Tuesday and Florida after that. Pundits say that she probably doesn't have this infrastructure, but like I said, she went and got some more cash and set it up. But, I think a tight shirt and a push-up bra will probably change her fortune. I'm just kidding. I'm sure there's someone out there that's going to complain to me about that one. I'm telling you, she's a lot prettier than she seems. Mayor Pete, the Murr, ties Bernie coming out of nowhere for the second time as many weeks. And here's an actual interesting talking point from Democrats, is that they are saying that in 2016, Bernie won that New Hampshire vote with 60% of the vote. This year, he only comes in with barely half of that, and that's something to be concerned about. I don't know about that. I just think that's just Democrat talking points. But the thing with Mayor Pete is he a moderate? Is he left-wing? No one seems to know. He's a lefty, for sure. So I'd say look into his policies. I think he wanted Medicare for all, Medicare for illegal immigrants. I think he was pandering to black people in South Carolina and in the Southeast, saying he was for reparations. Sure, pal. Whichever. So yeah, where that enthusiasm went for Bernie is kind of also a mystery to some, or is it just a talking point? Actually, what can here? This is what I think is going on with Bernie. It looks like the young vote turnout was kind of down in New Hampshire, and even though the overall voting numbers were up from the last cycle, the younger vote, which would probably be like centrist, Hillary Clinton type folk, didn't come out. Either that or the Dems are just going to get stuck with an octogenarian socialist. I mean, this is what the concern is about Bernie being on the top of the ticket. Not only is if Bernie gets the Dem nominee, that's going to hurt people who won suburban districts in states that Trump won. The reason the House has the majority right now is because of those swing districts. Because Nancy Pelosi was able to find, 20, 30 districts that were in Trump areas where he won by a lot, and they were to swing these districts that were probably within counties over to the Democrat side. But with you have Bernie on the top of a Democrat ticket with Trump, and it's not good. And that is actually a number one concern of Democrats in these swing districts. That's basically what they're telling their boss, Nancy Pelosi, that if Bernie's on top of that ticket, there's probably no way I keep this seat. And kind of going into my overall point is you can't win over you can't win over middle America, let alone women in the suburbs, who, if faced with the choice of a President Sanders term, would see their health insurance disappear, skyrocketing taxes in conjunction with a downsliding economy. Or they can, as Ben Shapiro put it, hold their nose, vote for Trump, and let the economy keep on keeping on. So between Pete and Bernie, I don't really think there's any way these guys win a general election against Trump. And as far as these Vegas caucuses coming up, that's going to be interesting. That's Harry Reid territory. Bernie was, I believe, in the Vegas primaries 4 years ago. I think there was a whole Susan Sarandon was out there, and I might be confusing that with something else. But it was very chaotic, and it was very chaotic, similar to not this year's Iowa caucuses, but how chaotic it was when Hillary was there. Now, the backstory to what happened 4 years ago is they saw how Bernie's grassroots were pretty good in Las Vegas. So Harry Reid, being the senator, the minority leader of the Senate at the time, he's from Las Vegas. He basically got his unions to go get some turnout for Hillary. Now, one of those same unions, I think it's culinary, some shit like that, they didn't even endorse anyone this year. Health insurance is a big priority, and one for Democrats and for Republicans too. I don't want to get kicked off my insurance. I like my insurance. I don't. I would put it to you like this. If you had the choice between going to a private, if the DMV had two options, or the mail, or the post office, actually, let's use the post office. This is a perfect example. If you had the choice to use the U.S. Post Office to send your mail, or FedEx, or UPS, or Amazon, which one are you picking? Yeah, that's what I thought. And that works the same way with healthcare. If you had the choice between government healthcare, private, which one are you picking? Not the government healthcare. It's shitty. But if you get rid of private, and all you have is government healthcare, that's the only one you can use. So I think that's going to hurt Bernie in Las Vegas, and probably overall. I remember when Trump went into office in 2017, the whole thing of repealing Obamacare. That was even a sticking point amongst Republican factions, and they had the House, Senate, and the executive branch in 2017. So healthcare is a pretty fiery subject, no matter which party you're talking to. And they struggled to repeal Obamacare because, for that same reason, people didn't want to lose their pre-existing conditions. They didn't want to lose their health insurance. And now Democrats are finding themselves in that same fracas. Now, Bloomberg is the wild card here. Again, you saw what I reported on earlier today, or said. I don't know, not much reporting going on here. But, until people actually vote for Bloomberg in a primary and in a state where he's on a ballot, this podcast isn't going to really acknowledge his candidacy until we cross that bridge. Now, as for Trump, he received a record that destroyed every incumbent president vote total in New Hampshire going back to Ronald Reagan, with roughly 130,000 votes. So 130,000 people turned out to vote for a guy they already knew was going to win. Good luck in November, Democrats. So speaking of which, let's stick with Bernie Sanders here really quick, and then we're going to get the fuck out of here. 2 weeks into February, one caucus, a primary later, it's Mayor Pete leading Bernie by one delegate. But it's still really early in the voting process. We still got Vegas, South Carolina, Super Tuesday. But those that watch football understand momentum is everything. And that's exactly what Iowa and New Hampshire provides going into the Nevada caucus. South Carolina primary, and then what we will have, Florida, Super Tuesday, et cetera, et cetera. But really quickly, let's back up. What is this primitive voting system we use to find the person that is worthy to run for a party that is running for the highest office on this planet? This is, in layman's terms, it's like a playoff. A very, very, very long playoff. So let's start here. The delegate count is similar to the Electoral College. But let me explain. So we all know how the Electoral College works. If you win a state, you get the allotted votes, and they are not handed out proportionally. If you get the W by the way of the popular vote in that state, you get all the votes. Now, delegates in the caucus primary system are still acquired via a popular vote, but it varies by each party. However, delegates are handed out proportionally. Again, it's based on the party and the allotted percentage of the vote, and I'm not going to get that wonky here. I mean, I want to say off the top of my head, if you get 40% of the vote, you automatically win the number one spot, and then you have to hit at least 15% to get said delegates. That could be wrong, but it's somewhere in that nature. Just fucking look it up if you really, really care about that shit. So, this also explains why the caucus and the primary in Iowa and New Hampshire are so important for you to come in first and second place in. You get that delegate count up right out of the gates. And you can walk into the next two states like New Hampshire, South Carolina, or Las Vegas, and you could say, "See, I'm your leader, you fucks." Now, Democrat hopefuls, they need 1,991 delegates to win the nomination. If they don't have that majority going into the convention in Milwaukee this July, a whole can of worms can open up. I'm talking about a brokered convention, but we won't go there yet. So the whole point of the primary system is momentum. I mean, that's one element to it. You know, there's many variables going into a primary system, but the goal is you need votes, which get you delegates, and delegates get you the nomination. But it's not that simple. You know, especially when you have the socialist wing of the Democrat Party basically hijacking the party right now. And looking at the top of the ticket, you got Mayor Pete, Bernie, Warren. The top three have been putting out some of the most wacky left-of-center policies I've ever seen. Same for you probably too. And if you've been paying attention to the debates earlier in the year, or last summer, I should say, you would see that they were offering Medicare for all, Medicare for illegal immigrants. I mean, they are way out there. No one can win a general election with that stuff. Now, Biden, he's done. Even if he wins South Carolina, I don't think he's going to do anything. And it's just going to be between Mayor Pete and Bernie going into, I believe, Super Tuesday. I don't know if Bloomberg is on the ballot for Florida. Florida might be after Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday is like March 3rd. And there is probably 1,200 delegates up for grabs that day. And that's where Bloomberg has all of his eggs. And if Bloomberg doesn't do too well on Super Tuesday, then you can kiss the moderate lane goodbye in the Democrat Party, and you probably can just hand that over to Trump. But they said that about Trump 4 years ago, so I want to tread lightly there. Now, coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire, like the Trump train of yore, the Bernie train is leaving the station and it's chugging down the tracks and it's going downhill. And established Democrats are worried. The media and the Democrats, sorry, that's redundant, are downplaying Bernie's momentum. What train? I don't see a train. Do you see a train? No train. Those of us that voted for President Trump, we've seen this episode before. The Democrat Party is in the midst of a hostile takeover by two people, Bernie and fucking Bloomberg, by a few fringe wings and a bunch of woke white liberals and their socialist leader. And the overlords of the said party are Democrats. And we know how Democrats feel about ceding powers to others. And even when the people who they claim that they represent ask for that change. And don't tell me I'm wrong. We all saw what the DNC and Clinton did last year to snuff coals of enthusiasm out of the Bernie train. And that was before they even got to Iowa. Remember, Crooked, that's what we call Clinton now, had superdelegates. Bernie doesn't. The DNC is again trying to snuff out those same coals, but they might be too late. The train is running, and it's heading down the tracks and fast. Really, the Democrats' only hope is that this goes to a brokered convention. Bernie doesn't have the 1991 votes, and that I believe when they vote the first time, there are no superdelegates, and everyone's bound to their original vote. So if he doesn't get 1991, now superdelegates are in play, and that's where, like I said, we won't go there, but that's where it might get interesting. So the difference between the two parties is what? Republicans understood snuffing out that fire of enthusiasm on the Trump train would be the second death of what Republicans represented. And if you don't understand what I'm saying there, all I'm referring to is the Whig Party and the anti-slavery parties that were the predecessors to what became the Republican Party. And they understood if they snuffed out Trump, no one was voting for them ever again. And now the Democrats face that same challenge, but with a twist. If Bernie doesn't suffer some epic collapse over the next 3 months, we could see some kind of Democrat civil war break out. If the DNC snuffs out Bernie's Trump train's coals of enthusiasm by allowing Mini Mike to steal the nomination via a vote in a brokered convention, there is no way in hell that block of Bernie bros is going to vote Democrat. And you actually might get some of them peel off and vote for Trump just to stick it to the DNC. And that is way worse. So the irony is that this death blow, it won't end the party. It will end the reign of establishment Democrats, conservative blue dog Democrats, and corporate Democrats who've had the party since the days of Bill the Cigar Clinton and before. So Democrats will alienate a conservative Democrat bloc, the corporate Wall Street bloc, and a portion of the populist left wing of the party. That's exactly what Obama and Democrats like Crooked did to the white working class vote that mostly turned around and voted Trump into office. Again, it's like we've seen this episode before. So both parties better tread lightly. Republicans, they got to use a lifeline, but will they be able to carry that torch beyond the Trump era? That's what I'm curious to see. Because after Trump, where's the enthusiasm? Lindsey Graham? Chuck Grassley? I mean, all these old fuck Republicans that are a little establishment, no enthusiasm. Marco Rubio, no enthusiasm. Rick Scott, no enthusiasm. But what about a guy like Dan Crenshaw? That's a guy I can get behind. Oh, God. He was an impeachment lawyer from Louisiana in the House for the Republicans. Oh, something Johnson. He's a constitutional lawyer. I can get behind that guy. He is a little boring, but I can get behind that guy. The enthusiasm with the Republicans is in the younger brands, not these old fucks. The Democrats, they're turning into a circular firing squad, alienating various factions and voting blocs that they're going to need to win a general election. By all means, you can be an activist party, scream and yell, call the other party bad names, immoral, and whatever else you've seen play out on social media. But I'll leave you with this. Never did the Republican Party ever put their finger on the proverbial scale to remove their presumptive nominee. And when Republicans had the option to remove said nominee, they didn't. If Pelosi and the Democrats are so inclined to rip up a State of the Union speech and infer it's better off being used as toilet paper, how do you think they feel about the Constitution? All right, well, that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for listening to Ready Said Podcast. Check us out on Spreaker and give us a like and a follow. Check us out on Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. It really helps podcasts get out there. You can find the podcast on CastBox, Podcast Addict, Google Podcast. This is your one-stop shop, current events, and politics podcast. Society is a joke. and we're just here for the first set. Thanks for listening. Please share the podcast if you'd like to support us. We'll see you next week, you fucks. Thanks for listening to the Ready Set Podcast. Check us out next week, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and look for us on our YouTube channel, Ready Set Podcast.